Animals have an amazing sense when it comes to knowing who they can trust. This dying tiger cried out for help, and what happened next was hard to believe. It was a calm, quiet day on Luca's remote homestead, the kind of place that often got cut off from the rest of the world during the winter. Everything seemed still, until a heavy thud hit right outside his door. Luca wanted to go check, but living out there, he had learned to be careful. In a place that wild, both people and animals could be a real danger when you were all alone without anyone nearby to help. He grabbed his pellet gun before opening the door just a crack. It wasn't strong enough to kill, but it would make enough noise to scare off anything with bad intentions. As Luca pushed the door open, a deep growl made him freeze. He knew that sound. It was a tiger, and by the sound of it, a very big one. Luca quickly shut the door and hurried to the window. When he looked out, his heart sank. The huge tiger was lying there in the snow, struggling even to lift his head. Every few seconds, a weak moan came from him, full of pain. He was close to the house, but even from there, Luca couldn't spot any obvious injuries. Still, something was clearly wrong. The tiger was massive, but he looked helpless and broken. Luca knew he couldn't just stand by and do nothing. It hurt too much just hearing those miserable sounds. He grabbed his phone and called every animal rescue center he could think of, but most of them said they couldn't get through the early winter snow to reach him. One group said they could come, but it would take them more than an hour to get there. Luca was torn. The tiger needed help now, but what could he do? As much as he wanted to help, he knew this was a full-grown tiger. One swipe of those huge paws, one snap of those jaws, and it could be over for him. There was no way he could safely go outside to check on the tiger. He had no idea how it would react to him. All Luca could do was wait, and it felt like the longest hour of his life. The helplessness was eating him alive. Since the tiger was lying so close to the house, Luca cracked the window open and tossed out a few small chunks of meat. Some landed right near the tiger, but he barely even sniffed them before turning his head away. He wasn't interested in food at all. Luca grabbed a bottle and through the window sprayed a small puddle of water onto the ground near the tiger. The tiger lifted his heavy head and took a slow sip, but then, with a loud thud, his head dropped back down. It seemed like even that tiny bit of effort had drained him completely. It was heartbreaking to see such a proud, powerful animal so weak and helpless. Luca couldn't get close enough to see the full extent of the tiger's injuries, but even from inside, he could see the massive creature shivering in the cold. Finally, Luca heard the sound of a truck making its way down the long driveway. He let out a deep breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Help was finally here. But the tiger didn't seem as happy about it. As the rescuers got closer, the tiger tried to stand, panicking at the sight of more humans, but he kept collapsing onto the ground. His fear made him try harder, but he was just too weak to get away or defend himself. Normally, Luca knew an injured wild animal could be even more dangerous, but this poor tiger couldn't even manage to lift his own weight. Luca spoke softly to him through the window, trying to calm him down. His voice seemed to help, and the tiger slowly settled back onto the snow. One of the sanctuary workers carefully aimed and hit the tiger with a tranquilizer dart. Within moments, he was asleep, and they could finally get close enough to help him. Luca stepped outside for the first time since this all began. When they lifted the tiger's paw, Luca's stomach flipped. There, on the tiger's leg, was a long scar where no fur grew back. In that instant, Luca realized something that left him speechless. This wasn't just any tiger. They had met before. It had happened almost 3 years earlier. Back then, Luca still had his old family dog, a sweet, loyal friend he loved dearly. One day, he had let her out like usual, but she suddenly started growling and then bolted into the woods. She was already old and slow, and Luca knew that running into the freezing forest could be deadly for her. He rushed after her, worried sick. When he finally caught up, the dog had gone much farther than he expected, almost off Luca's land. She was barking wildly at something on the ground. Luca's first thought was snakes. She used to chase them when she was younger, but now she wasn't quick enough, and Luca feared she'd get hurt. He hurried over and dropped down to the snow to see what she had found. That's when he saw it, a tiny tiger cub. its paw caught painfully in a trap. Luca never set bear traps on his land. Someone else must have placed it there, and now this little tiger was paying the price. The little cub was badly hurt from the trap. His leg had a deep, nasty wound where it had been caught, and there was no sign of a mother tiger anywhere nearby. Luca spoke softly to his dog, calming her down, and then he carefully freed the tiny cub from the trap and wrapped him up in his jacket. There was blood everywhere, and Luca honestly wasn't sure if the little one would make it. For days afterward, Luca kept going out to check the area, hoping to find fresh tiger tracks. But the snow stayed clean. It looked like the mother tiger had given up. Maybe she had other cubs to care for and couldn't risk staying. It was too cold, and her trapped baby wouldn't have survived the night if Luca's dog hadn't found him. Even then, saving the cub wasn't guaranteed. He was so tiny he still needed to nurse, and that wound on his front leg looked awful. Luca reached out to nearby shelters, but the snow was just too deep for any of them to get to his farm. If this cub was going to have a chance, Luca would have to care for him himself. That's when he named the cub Cato and made the decision to fight for him. A vet from the sanctuary gave Luca instructions over the phone, how to feed him, how to clean the wound, and which medicines could help. Luckily, Luca had stocked up well for winter and had everything he needed. But having supplies didn't mean it would be easy, not even close. The little tiger was hanging on by a thread, and every hour he stayed alive felt like a small miracle. Luca mixed up a milk formula he had for other animals and added a tiny piece of a sleeping tablet to help calm Cato. He gently cleaned the wound and stitched it up as best he could. For the first few days, the cub barely moved and let Luca do whatever he needed. But as Cato started to get stronger, he also got grumpier. Every time Luca tried to clean the wound, the little tiger would bite and scratch at him. Luca ended up having to use heavy gloves just to keep from getting torn up. Even so, it was kind of sweet seeing the little guy getting his strength and spirit back. Then, one morning, Luca checked the crate, and his heart dropped. Cato was unresponsive. Something was very wrong. There was no time to call for help. Luca's instincts and basic first aid training kicked in. He started chest compressions, working frantically over the tiny body. It felt like forever before there was any sign of life, but finally, Cato stirred and opened his eyes. Once the cub was breathing normally again, Luca did manage to call the vet. They told him it was probably a serious infection. Cato wasn't out of the woods yet. The infection could still kill him. Cato needed antibiotics, and fast. Luca spent every hour feeding the cub and taking care of him, and over time, Cato started to trust him completely. Luca could even slip medicine into Cato's mouth just like he used to do with his old dog. Cato and the dog would curl up and nap together, quickly becoming best friends. Luca worried a lot about taming the cub too much, but he really didn't have another choice. It was way too cold to leave Cato outside alone, and he had to interact with him to keep him alive. By the time spring rolled around, Cato had grown a lot. His wound had finally healed, but it left an ugly scar across his leg. The fur never grew back there, a permanent reminder of everything he had survived. Still, the important thing was that Cato was healthy and strong now. As soon as the weather warmed up, Cato started slipping away for longer stretches. Luca worried he wouldn't know how to survive, since no mother tiger had taught him how to hunt. But then one day, Cato proudly dragged a bird into the yard and ate it right in front of Luca. He was learning, becoming the wild tiger he was always meant to be. After that, Cato began staying away for longer and longer, until finally, one day he left and never came back. Luca missed him deeply, but he was proud too. Cato was living free, exactly as he should. Over the years, Cato would sometimes make brief appearances around the property. He never came too close and never acted aggressive. Luca always kept his distance, just watching quietly, happy to know Cato was doing well. But it had been 2 years since the last time Luca saw him, and he had started to fear the worst. A lot had changed since then. Luca had lost his beloved dog to old age, and the grief still weighed heavily on him. He had just decided he might be ready to get a new puppy after winter when Cato suddenly came back into his life. Now, knowing for sure that the huge, injured tiger outside his house was Cato, Luca's concern grew even heavier. The rescue team checked Cato over, and from the looks on their faces, Luca knew it was bad. They discovered that Cato's teeth were badly infected. It was serious and painful. They explained that Cato had likely gotten into a fight protecting his territory or hurt himself while hunting. Some of the inner pulp of his teeth was exposed and badly damaged, and the infection had been festering for a long time. It was clear Cato had been in terrible pain for a while, and now they needed to act fast if they were going to save him. They knew they had to move fast if they were going to save Cato's life. It was a race against time, and everyone was determined to give him a real chance. Normally, for something minor, the sanctuary could just give an animal a quick antibiotic shot and send it back into the wild. But Cato's infection was way too serious for that. He needed medicine over several days and a place to rest and get strong again. They decided the best option was to take Cato back to the sanctuary. Luca was relieved that Cato would finally get real help, but he couldn't help feeling a little sad too. This time, he wasn't the one who would be caring for Cato. Others would have to do it now. As they started lifting him onto a stretcher, Cato stirred. He opened his eyes and let out a low, warning growl. The rescuers jumped back fast. It was clear the first tranquilizer hadn't been strong enough. They had to dart him again to keep everyone safe. After that, they tried loading the massive tiger into a truck, but it wasn't easy. Cato was huge and heavy. Normally, they'd use a special crane, but out there, they had to make do. They set up a rope system and slowly, carefully managed to haul him into the back of the truck. Watching the truck pull away felt strange. Luca had always felt responsible for Cato, and now he was trusting others to take care of him. All he could do was hope and wait. The next day, Luca called the sanctuary to check in. The news was good. They had drained an abscess from Cato's mouth and were giving him fluids and soft food to help him build his strength back up. Best of all, Cato was eating again. Luca felt a huge wave of relief. It was exactly what he had hoped for. But the good news didn't last long. When Luca called the following day for another update, the news hit like a punch. Cato had escaped from the sanctuary. Luca could hardly believe what he was hearing. How could that even happen? The staff explained what had gone wrong. Cato was being kept in a small medical enclosure while he healed. He was getting stronger every day, but still needed care. One of the young student volunteers, who should never have been near a big cat alone, thought Cato seemed tame and harmless. The student made the huge mistake of opening the gate to pet him. Cato, of course, didn't recognize the kid. He growled low and serious. The teenager panicked, turned, and ran, leaving the gate wide open behind him. That was all Cato needed. He slipped out and disappeared into the surrounding land. Now Cato was out there, still needing medicine, miles away from his old territory. Everyone at the sanctuary was holding their breath, praying he wouldn't wander onto farmland, or worse, cross paths with someone who didn't know him. In an area where farmers didn't exactly welcome predators, the risk weighed heavily on everyone's mind. As word spread about Cato's escape from the sanctuary, a real sense of urgency filled the air. The rescue team knew just how dangerous the situation was. Cato, still weakened by his infection, was out there alone, far from the safety of his territory. Worry grew as they thought about what could happen, running into people who might panic or crossing onto farmland where he wouldn't be welcome. Driven by a mix of anxiety and determination, the team launched a full search. They combed through the countryside, setting traps and using trackers to find any sign of the big tiger. Local authorities helped spread the word, and the community was urged to be cautious. Days stretched into tense, nerve-wracking weeks as they searched. Every passing moment raised the chances of Cato's infection getting worse, or of him ending up somewhere unsafe. Then, one afternoon, a farmer on the edge of town made the call they had all been hoping for. He had seen Cato near the edge of his property, moving slowly and cautiously through the unfamiliar land. The team sprang into action. They headed straight to the spot, bringing tranquilizer darts and a careful plan to bring Cato in safely. As they approached, every step was measured. They knew that one wrong move could end badly for everyone. But luck was on their side that day. The dart hit, and Cato went down gently, slipping into a deep sleep. They worked fast to secure him and get him back to the sanctuary. When they arrived, the tired but relieved rescue team handed him over to the waiting staff. Cato was placed in a secure, roomy enclosure with everything he would need to heal properly this time. Days turned into weeks. Under the careful watch of the veterinarians and caretakers, Cato's infection cleared up, and his strength slowly returned. Finally, the big moment came. Cato was strong and healthy enough to return to the wild. The sanctuary staff picked a perfect spot, a huge stretch of wilderness filled with life where he could start fresh. As Cato disappeared into the trees, his big shape melting into the wild landscape, the team stood quietly, feeling a deep sense of pride. They had given this incredible tiger a second chance, or really a third one. And Luca, the man who had saved Cato all those years ago, was there too, standing with the sanctuary team as they watched him go. Even though their journeys had gone in different directions, Luca's bond with Cato would never be forgotten. The story of Cato traveled far and wide, touching hearts around the world. It's a reminder of what kindness, patience, and determination can do, even when the odds seem impossible. We hope today's incredible story has touched your heart. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real stories that celebrate the bond between people and animals. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.